Greetings. Stay a while and listen, and you shall hear the tale of a hero, much like you intrepid adventurers, who would fight against Diablo and his wretched forces of hell. And then, without warning, he would disappear for 6 months and not release a single lick of Diablo content and not tell anybody about it.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. I'm KageKaze, and I apologize for my long absence. It has been, wow, by my reckoning, it's been about 6 months or so. Pretty close, I think maybe 5, since I put out something on Diablo. So for that, you have my apologies. It was one of those things where I did not fall out of favor with Diablo. I still like the game. I just haven't been playing it. It pretty much came down to no major updates were coming out. Blizzard was very tight-lipped about what was going on. And we find out that we're not going to hear anything about Loot 2.0 for 6 months at least. They're like, not until BlizzCon or after BlizzCon or whatever, or we're going to get this patch with this new loot system. Then Gamescom hits. And Blizzard says, hey, expansion pack. It's like, oh, it makes perfect sense now. So their tight-lippedness, yeah, it perfectly makes sense now, but it was one of those moments in time where, as much as I love the game, updates weren't coming out, and there were other things that were kind of grabbing my attention at the time. So again, you have my apologies on that one, but today we're here to talk not specifically about the expansion, Reaper of Souls. I'm going to be going into that a bit in depth. I want to go over the information because I've been looking at some of the information that's coming out of that, looking at some of the items and whatnot, and I've got these thoughts in my head I want to sort through before I really start doing any major content on that. So you have my apologies that this isn't about Reaper of Souls, but it is about the announcement that came out just today as of this recording on the 17th of September. Blizzard is going to shut down not just the Real Money Auction House, but the Gold Auction House as well. If you are paying attention to Diablo at all, you probably have already heard this. It is major news. It is everywhere right now. As a matter of fact, I went in to log into Diablo just to make sure everything was updated, and it gives you this splash screen that says, hey, we are closing the auction house. This is a big deal. This is something that I really thought Blizzard was not going to do. I mean, this is a serious reversal from where they've been going. But then again, let's face it, a lot of what they're doing right now is a serious reversal. I suppose the closest thing I could equate it to is Microsoft's Xbox 180. I'm sorry, Xbox One. A lot of decisions that they originally made, they decided to backtrack on. This is not necessarily a bad thing. It's they had a vision at the time. It is not the vision that a lot of people that play Diablo shared with them. And the weird thing is even despite that, the game was successful and has sold so much, and people are still playing now. But I'm sure that lots more people are going to be playing once these changes take effect. But now, the auction house going away. This major news. Now, this doesn't really affect me too much, as I typically prefer to be self-found. But this is going to definitely affect a lot of other people that used it, and even some that might have had a passing interest. Now, I did use it at times. There were a few times where I just wasn't finding what I needed, and I kind of wanted a bit more survivability, but I could have completely lived without it. It was just one of those things where it was cool and all, but I saw the error in it. I saw that if I used it... So when I say I saw the error in it, it wasn't so much I saw the error in them having it, but I saw the error in me using it. Because I knew that if I started using it and just buying my gear and buying what I needed, it would start to kill that longevity of the game for me. It would start to kill that feeling of playing, of why I play the game. I play Diablo to get a chance at finding this really cool loot. And the auction house really... it felt like it trivialized the game a lot. And for some people it did. I mean, you could go out, play the game, buy some of the best loot, and then what are you doing? What is the reason? After you've bought the best loot, what do you do? Do you fight monsters for the sake of fighting monsters? Now, for the most part, that was enjoyable. Diablo 3 is an amazing action RPG. The combat, the animations, the sound, everything. It is a complete package of what to do right in an action RPG as far as gameplay is concerned, as far as mechanics are concerned. Fantastic, amazing. A lot of what drug it down was, of course, you had the always online requirement, but the ability to grab loot through the auction house at any point, and the loot itself, really. The fact that it was lacking some seriously awesome things to find. I mean, I don't think they were wrong about trying to make it so that a rare item could be better than a legendary or anything like that, but it was supposed to be a rare thing. Like, here are these really awesome legendary items. Now, you might get lucky and find this rare item that just so happened to roll these amazing stats, but the truth of the matter was, when the game came out, these rare items were better than the legendaries, pretty much hands down. And then you just had some weird loot decisions as far as stats that went on what items and whatnot. It was just a mess. You know, if it wasn't for the solid combat and mechanics, I don't think it would have gone near as far as it did. But let's face it, Blizzard knows how to make a game, even if they fail on certain aspects of that game. And the best part is that Blizzard tends to learn from their mistakes and how to make things better. Doesn't mean they don't make new mistakes. That happens too. Let's see where this one goes. So I want to talk about what this means. Alright, so the auction house is going away. This, again, a major decision. This is not just going to change the economy of the game, and that's definitely important. But there's actually gameplay aspects that this is going to tap into, and that's what I want to talk about today. So let's talk about what this does, right? With no auction house, you have no kind of built-in trade system, right? You have no way of getting the loot that you need. So this is where Loot 2.0 is going to come into effect. So I haven't looked enough into how that's going to work. I don't even think they've really given us all the details of it. But we're looking at things like targeted legendaries when you beat a boss for the first time of appropriate level. Items that can roll with sufficiently legendary statistics. Items that will drop more geared towards your class. To kind of put that into context, the way I feel that they're going to do that is, let's look at another action RPG, Marvel Heroes. Now, that's gone through a couple patches. I haven't played it since, so I can't speak of the new current version of Marvel Heroes. But what they did in that game that was really not that bad of an idea is that when you were playing a character, loot that dropped more often than not was for your character. Now, you would still find loot for other characters, but most of it would be for your character. And it looks like what Loot 2.0 is going to do is borrow that idea and say, hey, you're a barbarian, you need to have some strength gear. So we're going to start dropping some strength gear for you more often than this other stuff that you need, or maybe class-specific items. Here you go. Have these. You can use those. It might be better, it might not, but we're going to give you a higher chance that you can use something for yourself right now. That's good. I'm glad to see that. I think that will really help the gameplay, and like people that have one class that they like to play, they don't want to play the others. That's going to really help them. It's going to make it so that you want to play the game more often. I mean, let's face it, when it comes to Diablo 3 right now, going out and finding items isn't really always about finding that item for yourself. It's finding that item that's going to sell. And that doesn't seem like it's the best gameplay experience. I mean, you're going out and finding that really awesome. It's like, awesome, I found this thing that's going to turn into gold, so I can buy the thing I really want. That's not a good feeling. So I'm glad to see that change. But beyond that, let's talk about what this can do for Blizzard as far as how they balance the game. Let's go back. Let's rewind the clock a bit here, ladies and gentlemen. Let's talk about one of the very first controversial decisions that Blizzard made after the game came out regarding loot. They nerfed by half improved attack speed. this was a major thing. People were building sets around improved attack speed. Blizzard's like, no, it's too powerful. It affects not only your damage, but life leech and everything. And it was true. It was a really powerful stat. Probably too powerful, just like they said. But why was it such a big deal? Well, it's because people were buying that gear. People were buying and selling that gear, not just for gold. Now, there's the big thing. This wasn't just gold. We're talking about real cash that people were throwing into this game to buy gear. And they wanted to nerf that gear. And people were like, whoa, I spent money here. I don't want to lose that money. What are you doing? This is bad. So, by taking out the auction house, would that have been such a big deal? They could take a stat and say, you know what, we feel like this stat isn't that good. Now, people might say, but I went and I found all this loot for this. Yeah, okay, sure, that makes sense, but then doesn't that make you want to go out and find better loot? Different loot? And let's face it, in an ideal world, that one stat should not trump everything. You should have choices that are really useful. Now, one stat would be great for maybe a particular build, but that's not the way the game works right now. When improved attack speed was nerfed, it was one of the best stats. And they still have stats that are really good right now that might need to be balanced out somehow. Not saying that stat needs to come down, but some stats might need to be elevated. Well, what next, right? So, improved attack speed. That's just one example of something they can change. Now that they've got a new loot system, you're going to find more loot, more targeted loot. And now that you're not buying it, and you're not invested in it that way, you're going to have more of a hodgepodge set of gear. And so they can look at these things and decide how they want to move forward. Now, it's not to say you can't trade gear. You certainly can. You're going to have trade chat. Hopefully there will be some kind of system in place to help facilitate trades. But beyond improved attack speed, there is something else on my mind that I think was a product of the auction house. I speak of the coveted one with everything that all of you monks like to have. Because one with everything is one of those abilities that when Blizzard tested it internally, they had no idea what they were basically doing with that one. They did not really even know what this would become, the monster this would become with the auction house. When they tested it, they didn't even consider it to be one of the ideal must-have monk stats because they are sitting there finding their own gear. Finding ideal items with a plus to all resist and a plus to whatever resist you happen to be stacking, that is incredibly rare. To do that on your own, and the auction house made it so that people could do it easily. And so all these monks are using one with everything, grabbing this gear. And now they've got these sets that they are very hard to replace. And again, it factors into people spending money. Blizzard has said time and time again, we want to change one with everything. We want to change one with everything. We feel that it's too good, but they don't change it because they understand that, one, people have spent money on this stuff, but two, all the monks are relying on it, so they have to do something else as well to make it useful. They want to make it so it's still useful, but make it so that it is not the be-all, end-all thing. And part of that has been nerfing the content for, say, Inferno level. Okay, so great. They're making strides to that effect. But without the auction house, and now we're talking about adding a new act into Diablo with the expansion pack, do you think that one with everything is going to maintain its stature? Will that be the one passive to go to for monks? I mean, just putting aside any possible changes that they make to skills right now, let's just talk about the current game as it is, and you're going to go into a new territory with all sorts of new gear, and you're going to have to start finding your gear again. One with everything might start to drop off, and people will start looking at different passives as they find gear that is better but doesn't have the stats that match one with everything. Blizzard can now, without the auction house, change skills. They're going to add all sorts of new items that are supposed to be game changers now too, right? And I have mixed feelings on that. I'm going to go into that more in detail when I actually get a good look at some of the items they've presented. But let's just let's take them at their word and take that at face value, that there's going to be really awesome legendaries that change all these things that you can do. That's fantastic. And they can balance things around that, make different builds, and not only that, but they can add or change skills that we currently have and play around with them a little bit. Right? Because right now, with all this gear we've got, we're set on certain stats. They can go and change that around now. Because now everybody's not going to go in the auction house and buy their ideal set of gear anymore. They can't. What I really like about this is that it's really... They talk about these game-changing items. The removal of the auction house is really going to make that work. The reason why is because no matter what kind of really cool legendaries Blizzard makes, right, no matter how cool they do it, no matter what unique mechanics they throw into a legendary item, what's going to end up happening is someone's going to find that best legendary item, make a build around it, and say to everybody, hey, look, I found this build, you should go and make this. Alright, it happens. You look at the game now, look at some of the forums now for Diablo 3. People go and they latch onto builds, and some of those builds say you should have this item, or some builds work only with an item. Of course, right now it's usually only because of certain stats, but with Loot 2.0 coming out, it's going to probably be around certain procs. With an auction house, people can go and buy that item at will, and all of a sudden you've got copycat builds all over the place. So what happens when you're forced to take items that are given to you and work around those? Right? You're given these random set of items. It's almost like using a trading card game, right? And going into a draft where you have to pick, you're given random cards and you have to make a deck out of it. You have to do that with gear now because you can't go buy it. Same thing happened in Diablo 2, but in Diablo 2 a huge trading thing blew up with Stones of Jordan. But now, before that kicks off, you're going to have this point in time where people are going to be playing unique builds and having weird gear. And so it's really going to enhance that feeling of the Blizzard's going to give you all sorts of these items that do different things, and you're going to want to test them. For one, nobody really knows how good they're going to be until people try them. But for two, if you cannot get the really good item that you want, maybe it's not up for trade, maybe it's too expensive for whatever people want to trade it for, maybe you just don't trade, or whatever the reason, you might find an item that's, that's kind of interesting. It's a little bit better, or maybe even a little bit worse, but it's got this one mechanic that I would like to try out. People will basically be inclined to try these things out now. So you're kind of social engineering people in this way. You're saying, hey, it's not ideal, but you don't have anything better right now. Go, play, have fun with it. I really think that this decision is going to be one of the best things they've done for Diablo. I mean, yeah, there's going to be people that don't like it. I mean, here's the thing. I always was indifferent about the auction house. I could do with it. I could love it or leave it, basically. I didn't care. I personally didn't use it, but I respected the decision of people that wanted to use it because some people were using it and still having fun. But I felt bad for the people that were using it and then found out, I don't like this game anymore. I bought this loot, and now I really have nothing to strive for. I felt bad when that happened. But through it all, I always thought, and at least it seemed, with a lot of people talking about Diablo, one of the biggest things that was complained about was the auction house, and a lot of people just going out and buying gear. And I always thought that it would just seem so much better if people had to go out and find what they wanted and could enjoy it that way. And the game, at the time when it came out, really wasn't designed for that because they had such high walls and points of entry that this is what really caused the problem. When the game first came out, I remember being stuck, not being able to progress into Inferno because I was a barbarian, and at the time, barbarians were pretty bad about taking damage. The people that were getting into Inferno and the high levels of play were typically ranged characters that could kite and not get hit and just run. You were a melee, you were dying pretty much, and they pretty much raised the point of entry way too high. So now, with a lower point of entry and the fact that there's really cool stuff to find, I really think this is going to be a great idea. This is going to be a great decision for the game. You know, it sucks. There are people that actually really liked the auction house. You know, this is why they didn't get rid of it for so long. It wasn't... A lot of people would like to say that Blizzard was greedy about this, but think about it. If Blizzard wanted to make a bunch of money on that auction house, don't you think they would have added a percentage to the sales instead of a flat rate? They could have made a bunch of money on people selling $250 items. They were only making about $1 out of that. And of course, a lot of that was just to facilitate the infrastructure, and of course to facilitate the partnership with PayPal. At least so it would seem. But that didn't really seem like it was a financial decision there. Now, people are making money. People do like the auction house. And, you know, to you guys, I'm sorry. I really am. I mean, you should really... It's nice to be able to play the way you want to play. But as a whole, I really feel that people that want to play the game, play Diablo 3, are going to enjoy this change more. I think for the health and longevity of the game, this is the best decision they can make. I really do. So, there are certain questions, of course, though, that this leads to. Let's talk about number one problem that Diablo 3 had, that people complained about from day one. Why? Because they couldn't connect. Always online. Always online. So, without an auction house, could Blizzard feasibly make it so that Diablo plays offline? There's a possibility. Now, they're not talking about that. And let's face it, to be honest, they probably won't. But then again, I said the same thing about the auction house. And look what's happening now. So, let's see. Let's see where that goes. If not an offline mode, or if not an always offline, maybe something to where if you're playing by yourself offline, I don't know. They're probably going to continue to use it as a protection and possible DRM type solution. It would be nice to see an offline mode, because I know there's a lot of people that would like to play the game that don't have an internet connection or might have a spotty internet connection. So that would be cool to see. It is going to be a possibility without the auction house, because that was one of the primary reasons they gave for doing that. Now is going to be the time to tell is if that's true or not. Or if maybe they become maybe they've come too complacent of having it. Maybe they would prefer to have it now that they've had it for so long. We'll have to see. But what does this mean for... I mentioned economy earlier. Let's go into that. What does this mean for the economy? Goldsinks. They added those Marquise gems in a recent patch, and those were pretty much meant to be a gold sink. I mean, what are those? A few million to get the patterns to make them? These things were meant because there's so much gold out in the economy. People are buying and selling and trading, and there's gold everywhere. Well, people aren't going to be able to get gold as easily now that there's no auction house. So are the prices of these former gold sinks going to go down? Well, that would be kind of nice. Someone like me can't afford that. I don't have enough gold to even buy one of the patterns, I don't think. You know, not only that, but let's talk about that. Patterns. Patterns for gems. Patterns for recipes. Those don't drop very often. And your best bet at getting those was the auction house yet again. And they're pretty easy to get on the auction house, quite honestly. Not a lot of them are very expensive. It's just because a lot of them really aren't optimal. So what are they going to do? Are they going to make it so that stuff drops more often? I certainly hope so. With Luke 2.0, I hope that happens. You know what I'd like to see? I want to see more set items. I want to see more of those. All these legendaries are cool and all, but what about the sets? Diablo 2, one of my favorite things in Diablo 2 as I was playing, leveling up, was finding a piece of a set and hoping that I would find another piece of that set and then maybe create a character or do something else that I could try and test that out. And while I haven't looked into it, I'm hearing there's going to be possibly ladders returning to Diablo. I need to look into that. I apologize I haven't looked into that for this discussion, but that will add validity to making characters and getting this, set items and loot to pull back down to new characters or something like that. There's just all these possibilities that kind of swim in my head right now that the auction house is going to go away. It's like they could completely make this Diablo 3, remake this. This is almost like Diablo 3 A Realm Reborn, to use a Final Fantasy reference. We're basically going to take Diablo, make this expansion, and this is really the key of the matter, I think, is Diablo 3 I always thought was going to come into its stride with an expansion pack. It happened with Diablo 2. So many people like to compare Diablo 3 to Diablo 2. And they like to say Diablo 2 was better. It was better here, better there. A lot of people don't realize that the game that they fell in love with as Diablo 2 didn't happen until Lord of Destruction hit. And that was a couple of years after Diablo 2. Diablo 2 really, well, it was a good game in its own right. It didn't become the game a lot of people remember until the expansion. And that's really what we're seeing here, I think. So we're probably going to go back to some of those old ideas. And with that, I want to see set pieces. I want to see those come back. I really do. I mean, there's a few set pieces you can make from crafting because of the patterns on the auction house, but let's make some more of them drop. Let's make some of them be really, really cool. And with the new loot system where legendary items can roll with higher item levels now, you can do that with set pieces and make some really awesome stuff. I really want to see, with these changes, I want to see patterns, sets, all this stuff just be easier to find, especially the gems. I really think that the whole idea of not allowing you to make higher level gems was a decision because of the auction house, because of how cheap a lot of those gems are by themselves, and then the patterns are cheap as well. So there's really a lot of decisions here, economy-wise and item-wise, that they have to put into effect because this auction house is going away. Tons of changes. This really is, even though it seems like a very simple thing, they're just going to flip a switch and turn it off, the future this game has is basically just been changed. There is so much that they can do now to the base mechanics of the game and to items that they don't have to worry about this albatross around their neck anymore, about this auction house. You know, anytime they make a change, they have to think of how that auction house is going to affect people, because people are spending money. It's like the skills, one with everything, improved attack speed. All of that stuff had major repercussions because of the auction house. So I, for one, am very excited about Blizzard's future and the future of Diablo 3. This is only the first expansion pack coming out when Loot 2.0 hits. There's a potential for more. Diablo 2 only had one, but Diablo 3 is a different game. And creating content for games is a little bit of a different animal. Plus, we are also seeing an expansion pack a lot sooner than Diablo 2 saw one. So there's plenty of time. I am really looking forward to this. Now, to end things off, I want to talk about this. I want to talk about the date that they picked for the auction house. We're looking at an auction house shutdown on March 18th, 2014. Now, we all know that the expansion isn't coming out until 2014, and I don't think we're probably going to see it around March, but if anything, I'm going to say dollars to donuts, Loot 2.0 is going to be out around that time. I don't think they want to shut down that auction house until they have a replacement system. And the replacement system is Loot 2.0. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, my speculation is that we're going to see a patch around March to facilitate the auction house going away and the introduction of Loot 2.0. It's going to have to be a patch to shut down the auction house anyway. I mean, certainly they could disable the feature, but I'm pretty sure what they're going to do is patch in features so that if you've got auctions running and things like that, because people are asking those questions right now. What happens if I have gold or auctions or something up in there when this changeover happens? They're probably going to put some systems in place for that. Now, even better news regarding that is that we've heard that there's going to possibly be a PTR this year. Now, nothing's going to happen until after BlizzCon, but there is a possibility. They're talking about it. There is no word, no official announcement. They've just said this is what we want to do, is they want to let us play with Loot 2.0 on the public test realms sometime after BlizzCon, hopefully this year. So we should see that system in place and what it means before the auction house gets shut down. So I'll be looking forward to that as well. I want to go into that PTR and I want to see how is this going to work. I want to feel it. before I know, are they moving in that right direction? I really think they are. You know, I had nothing against Jay Wilson. There were definitely questionable decisions that he made, but he also made some pretty good ones. A lot of people like to focus on the bad, but let's face it, there were a lot of changes here that made Diablo 3 what it is. And they're trying to fix the bad ones. But ever since he left, there's been a lot of changes going forth. And I see them really trying, and they're trying hard, it seems, to win us over again with this whole ordeal. So it looks like the new director is really pushing to get this out, and I'm really happy with what I see. Now I'm going to dig more into Reaper's Souls, because I want to look at that and I want to know for sure what's going on there, and then I will comment on that at a later time. So I will do another one of these once I have a good feel for their announcements. I'm still hopeful. There's lots of time before this expansion comes out, so anything that we see that's bad can change. And everything that they're showing us is non-final. Not final at all. So if they get feedback on something they show us, they might turn it around. So far that they've learned that listening to the feedback on Diablo 3 has been an excellent idea. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for stopping by once again for a Diablo Digest. Not quite an hour this time around, but hey, that might be a good thing. Please, leave discussion. Leave questions, comments, suggestions, feedback of any kind. I would like to see what you guys think about this. And leave those in the comments section below. Or you can, of course, use the links that are provided at the end of the video. You can reach me on Twitter. You can reach me via the email, theshadowpost@gmail.com. Look forward to hearing from you. I'll see you next time.